Hello, welcome to my channel, Anglican Aesthetics. I wanted to make an announcement about the future trajectory of Anglican Aesthetics. I originally made this channel not primarily to engage in polemics, but primarily to advance the overall vision I have for my life and for my household's life. Namely, that my household would be a center of theological revitalization for the church. That from my household, from the work of my wife Sophia and I, we together would be a kind of force in our community through which theological revitalization could happen. As I've become more convinced in my Anglicanism, this vision has now taken on a kind of Anglican flavor, where my vision for our household is that we would be a kind of epicenter of theological revitalization for Orthodox Anglicanism. And the channel has adapted itself to that end, to my vision for the trajectory of our household. And to that end, I want to actually start to go back to the roots a little bit of my channel, to the original purpose for which I made it. This doesn't mean I will stop doing polemical content responding to Roman Catholics and Orthodox Christians. I think this is very important. It has proven itself to be a need in the church right now. But I want to start doing those other things for which I made this channel. To that end, I am announcing the Anglican Catechetical Initiative. This initiative grows out of a desire that has been forged in my own heart as I've become more solidified in my Anglicanism. Namely, a desire to see the function of the catechetical school revitalized. The ancient catechetical schools in their day were centers of theological education and preparation for clergy and laity alike. I want to see that happen again. To see the catechetical school brought back to be this impactful epicenter of theological education for the 21st century. This is somewhat different than the seminary model of theological education, and I'll explain how in a moment. The objectives of this initiative are as follows: to create resources to fuel the revival of Orthodox Anglicanism, first. I've been contacted now by a number of priests who tell me that they use my videos and these resources in their local context. That is so encouraging to me. And I want to continue creating resources in a more self-consciously catechetical vein. Catechesis is ultimately for participation in the life of the triune God in Jesus Christ. And to that end, creating resources that fuel the revival of Orthodox Anglicanism will lead into a second objective, namely, through my channel, to serve the development of clergy and lay leaders for the promotion of virtue in a distinctively Anglican vein. One of the beauties of the Roman Church, I think, is that the Roman Church showcases her efficacy often by showcasing her spirituality, and there are many riches in Roman Catholic spirituality. But one of the things that draws me to Anglicanism is that I find that there are distinctive riches in Anglican spirituality and theology that the church needs, that would be a blessing to bring to the wider people of God. And my third objective is to establish networks of people who are well read in Anglican spirituality and theology, and can then pass this along to their local contexts, such that they'd be able to function as lay catechists within their contexts, themselves being epicenters in their communities for the revitalization of Orthodox Anglican theology and spirituality. Now, before I get into some of the methods and products, as it were, of this Anglican Catechetical initiative, I want to give a kind of backdrop, the backstory to this initiative. There were three things in my life, my personal and professional life, that have converged for me, that have prompted me to think now is the time actually to push this, to see what happens, to see if this might get off the ground. First is kind of random. The firing of Dr. Jennifer Frey from the Honors College at the University of Tulsa was a watershed moment for me, actually. If you don't know the story, Dr. Jennifer Frey is a Roman Catholic philosopher who teaches at the University of Tulsa. She spearheaded the Honors College program at the University of Tulsa, centering it around the learning of the great books, structuring Socratic seminars that facilitated student dialogue, and the Honors College brought in students and grants. By every metric, it was a roaring success. It brought in revenue for the university. And yet, the administrators chose to cut it anyway. What that makes me realize is that the priorities of the administrations at universities are radically disjuncted from the priorities of educators, of Christian educators that seek formation. Often what we're seeing in higher ed is a move of the university towards being a kind of technical / vocational school, more funding going into STEM, things like that, cutting of the humanities everywhere. The classical vision of the university, of course, was that it would be a place of virtue formation, not a place that sort of just packages products and sells those products to make a profit. And of course, the university needs to make some profit to survive, but choices are being made to maximize profit at the university level, not to maximize flourishing, with profit being seen as a tool and ordered towards virtue formation. That is not how the modern university is structured. This ties in then to the second thing that moved me to want to seek doing this now. If you haven't heard the news about the place where I work at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. It is a school I love. I loved being there. The education I got at TEDS was incredible. I started my Master of Divinity in 2018 and finished with a Master of Divinity and Master of Systematic Theology in 2023. Spent a lot of time at TEDS. My professors were amazing. Some of the most pastoral brothers and sisters I have ever met. They invested so much in their students. But it became apparent as I've worked now in graduate admissions that the priorities of the faculty, the way that they think about education, is very different than the way an administrative board thinks about theological education. Through a series of both bad financial choices, enrollment factors, a number of different things, TEDS is now in the place where the only way it can survive is by merging with Trinity Western University. So TEDS is moving to Canada. It will no longer be in the Chicagoland area as of the fall of 2026. And while disjunctive vision between the administration and the faculty is not the only reason for why TEDS is in the financial situation that it is, just a quick note, my dog might join us as always. It's not the only reason for that, but it is a big reason. different visions for what TEDS is supposed to be, clashing with each other for decades. Concretely, one of the ways I saw this actually as a graduate enrollment counselor is when Trinity Evangelical Divinity School moved from a 16-week class structure to an 8-week class structure. The typical traditional way a class was delivered at TEDS is that you would have weekly instruction where the class would meet once a week for maybe 3-4 hours every week for 16 weeks. And of course, within the span of that week, you had reading and writing and things like that to do. And that means you had a whole semester to think through class material. The administration made the decision to move from a 16-week model to an 8-week model. The decision was made on the basis of maximizing profit, because it was said that it would create more entry points for students, and that this was working in other contexts. For instance, in certain financial programs, you might find this in University of Illinois Chicago, for instance, you've seen the switch to online instruction in an 8-week format where you can have more entry points in those 8 weeks. Now, it was presented to some of us that the faculty were completely on board with this, that it was nearly unanimous to vote to change the semester system. But then I was talking to my friends on faculty, a particular friend now who is at Trinity Bristol. I learned that actually the faculty were told that if they don't do this, TEDS will close. So if you're told as a professor that if you don't vote in a particular way, you'll probably lose your job, which way are you going to vote? Like, it's not hard to figure out. So it's not a mystery why they voted to do that. But then as I talked to more and more faculty, it was very clear that almost all of them really did not like the fact that they were being told to move to this 8-week schedule. And as it turned out, TEDS lost money on this 8-week schedule in trying to model theological education off of other sort of graduate school models. TEDS has also primarily gone online. Most of the student base now is online. That's not TEDS specific. That's actually just true across most American seminaries right now. Fuller has a massive online base. Gordon Conwell has a massive online base. Theological education has largely shifted online. The value proposition of the seminary before this shift to online learning that was basically solidified in COVID, though it was happening before that, was that you would be immersed in a community of other people, scrappy other people preparing for ministry together, and you're talking about what you're learning day in and day out. That just isn't the reality more on TEDS' campus. If you ever have walked through the campus in the past 6 months, it feels a little bit like a ghost town, actually. And again, this is not just TEDS. This is also Fuller. This is also Gordon Conwell. You'll find these same realities at many evangelical seminaries. It's a really sad fact. And a large reason for this shift towards online delivery of content is because of an orientation towards profit. It's true that if you have a model, and in some cases survival for sure, and for Trinity in some cases it had to do that actually to survive the pandemic, but also beyond the pandemic, because of the general culture of theological education, namely that it exists to sort of deliver information packets in order to then reap profits. TEDS is then part of this larger system that pushed it, I would say, to structure itself accordingly. That's just sort of my view of things. Take it or leave it. But what it at least impressed to my mind is that the way university is done is very disjoined from the way educators would have it be done. You can chalk that up to all sorts of things, financial necessity, whatever. But that's just the fact. So what happened to Jennifer Frey is a kind of microcosm of what's happening on universities in America in general. Namely, that the priorities of administrators are not towards formation for its own sake, but formation is ordered towards profit, towards maximizing profit. And that culture grips universities, whether they're trying to resist it or not. It's a force that they have to reckon with, and an increasingly powerful force in America. Seminary degrees are massively overpriced. It should not plunge a seminarian, right, $70,000 or whatever into debt to get an MDiv that's going to yield a job that will pay them like $40K a year, right? That's not sensible. It's not a sensible way to do theology. And what we've found in the digital age is sometimes, actually often, people with MDivs and MAs like me are often not as prepared as many without those degrees. There are a lot of learned people that you can talk to, a lot of Discord Theo Bro nerds. If you're one of them, you know who I'm talking about, who are brilliant, right? And they don't have a seminary degree, but they know Latin, they know Greek, they know Hebrew, and they're doing incredible translation work and putting the fruits of the academy in many cases to shame. Not in all cases, but in many cases. So if the university then is just about information transfer, what these Discord nerds have shown is that, well, actually you can get information in more thorough ways and often cheaper than you can through a university, which makes the university kind of redundant in its purpose. The third thing that has pressed me to say, I think now might be the time, is honestly also personal financial struggle for me. I've had to get a second job. So this will likely be, so long as I'm working the second job, I work a morning shift at FedEx. So wake up at 3 a.m. and head over to work, and then I throw boxes around and, hopefully not throw them around, try to pack them. And that means that this video will probably, I just started this job actually, so this video will actually probably be the last video I can record like this as long as I have this job. Most of my videos will probably have to be recorded in the car on my commute to my full-time job while I still have my job at Ted's while we're not laid off. And that's kind of a bummer. I'd rather do this, actually. I'd rather spend my time applying my education towards the good of the church. And so that fact presses me to say, look, I would rather do this as a part-time gig. The financial factors that press on my wife and I really all of a sudden were very expensive car problems, and we're just in a place and context where we both need those. And so that means in order to fix those problems, I just have to work a second job. And I would rather work this as my second job, but I can't do that at the moment. And so we'll get into exactly the numbers I'm asking for to raise here to see if this might be feasible. But that's honestly why I'm pushing this now. Okay, so what products, what is the sort of methods, what are the methods that are coming out of the Anglican Catechetical initiative that I'm envisioning? Here's what I want to do. First, I want to establish regular bi-monthly reading fellowships through which we Socratically work through classic Anglican texts and frequently pray. I will link those texts in the Discord that I'm going to talk about in a second. But one reason I want to do this Socratically actually comes from just listening to how Jennifer Frey structured the Honors College at Tulsa. That while she was a guide to these texts, she might even prepare some lectures to watch beforehand. The learning happened in facilitating robust dialogue through well thought through questions that she had and she would bring. I found that to be true at TEDS actually as well. When working through Augustine, I took Theology of Augustine with Kevin Van Hooser. So much of the learning happened dialogically in that class. Same thing at Wheaton College when I was there as well. Much of the learning, the best learning that happened was seminar style dialogical. Second, I want to establish a regular Discord as a means of frequent communication. The folks who will be given access to that Discord will be the ones who support the Anglican Catechetical initiative. And the Discord will be the means through which we facilitate this kind of seminar-style learning. Third, I want to record our seminar-style meetings to make them available to the wider public, as well as record lectures on those readings to put out there as well. The benefit of supporting the Anglican Catechetical Initiative then would be the ability to actually participate in the Discord and participate in the readings as well. And to be mentored through this sort of seminar style environment. I'm not requiring a set amount to be part of the Discord. You can be a monthly supporter at any amount, and you will get access to that. Hopefully significantly undercutting the cost of a seminary education, and hopefully getting even more than you would get at, a Gordon Conwell. I can't guarantee that, right? I only have an MDiv and MA after all, but as some of you know, my own credentials are those 2 academic credentials as well as 15 peer-reviewed published journal articles. And I think I can actually facilitate a good experience like this. Now, the fourth thing I want to do is to produce various video series through being funded, through being able to do this part-time. First, I've mentioned this before, and I had a campaign for this when I had 2K subscribers and it didn't pan out. But what I'd like to produce is a video series on the history of the Anglican Church. A detailed, thorough video series done well and right, given the space and time I've been provided to research and write the scripts for these videos. I would like to complete my videos on the 39 articles. I would like to develop a catechetical program to be used at local churches. So to write a curriculum that then can be adapted to your local context. Fourth, I would like to do video series on 20th century Anglican theology and apologetics, tracing figures such as C.S. Lewis, Dorothy Sayers, William Temple, to see how they interfaced with contemporary philosophy from a robustly Anglican imagination. Fifth, I would love to make a video series exploring Anglican polemics and Anglican philosophy. So polemics, particularly, of course, against Roman Catholics, but also apologetics. Anglican writers were active in responding to the Enlightenment and responding to Christian heresies, particularly non-Trinitarian heresies, Socinianism, and other sort of things. What we do this through is by exploring. I would make video lectures, and here is where the seminar style kind of learning would center as well, would come into play as well. Work through the Parker Society volumes, all of them, and the Anglo-Catholic Library, all of them. That's ambitious, but I think we can do it. Figures like Edmund Law, Daniel Waterland, Joseph Butler, William Forbes, looking at how they employed theology and philosophy to interact with the contemporary hot-button issues of their day. And sixth, I would like to produce a video series on Anglican political theology. There were quite a few Anglican political theological writers, figures like John Neville Figs, E.B. Pusey, but also prior, of course, Richard Hooker he had much to say. And then contemporary figures like Oliver O'Donovan. And I would like to then provide that to the public, and again, to engage the sort of seminar style learning of these figures. Some of our initial readings here, to get ourselves started, the first things I'd like to do in this sort of seminar style, as well as producing video lectures and video series and written works as well, would be to systematically work through Bede's Ecclesiastical History, the classic The English Reformation by Dickens, and Heretics and Unbelievers by Marshall. We'd start there, and then we'd work our way through the Parker Society volumes, the Anglo-Catholic Library, and work through other topics depending on people's interests. Now, here's the ask. According to Grok, I used AI to calculate this. So according to Grok, to take home $21 an hour and work 20 hours a week on this project, that's what I'm aiming for. I'll need to raise about $3,000 in monthly support. And that accounts for Patreon fees as well as taxes in Illinois. So to begin work on that project, I'd want to get to $2,000 a month. That's when I would go full force in diving into to try to do this, to see if it's feasible, and to quit FedEx and do this at $20 a month. And should I exceed this for every $35 I raise, that's what it costs. That's what it would cost to pay yourself $21. I can add 1 hour to the total hours per month. So roughly for every $20 I raise, I can work 1 hour more a week on this project. And I'm willing to go full time if that's feasible, if that's possible. So here's what I'm asking. To see if this project is feasible, is something that you might be excited about, would you commit to supporting me for 3 to 6 months just to see how much can we get done together? How much can we produce for the good of Orthodox Anglicanism, for the revitalization of Orthodox Anglicanism, and for a kind of digital Anglican catechetical school? Now, I'm calling this an Anglican Catechetical initiative because, of course, an actual Anglican catechetical school would be embodied and in person. Cranmer Theological House is a great example of that, as well as, Neshoda is doing some good stuff as well. But this initiative hopefully would equip you to be a kind of catechetical center in your own context and to establish catechesis in your own context. So, would you be willing to support me for 3 to 6 months? Let's see what happens. Let's see what God does. And if you say, you know what, actually, I don't think this is worth it. I think I can be supporting other things. Fair enough. I get it. But if you find value in my content and you would like me to do this work, which I would be thrilled to do. I would be thrilled to devote 25 hours a week to this. I would be thrilled to devote my whole. I'd be thrilled to do this full time. That would be a joy. But 25 hours would give me that space for research, careful writing, careful preparation to make this possible. So I'm putting that out there, seeing what happens. Thank you so much for watching, and may the Lord bless you. Regardless of whether this gets off the ground, may the Lord bless you from whatever riches, whatever is true, good, and beautiful in Anglican theology. May God take that and use that in your own life to facilitate union with Christ. Thank you so much for watching. God bless.